It's a rare honor for me to be closeted with Dr. Arasendran, an institution by himself and the architect of an incredible accomplishment in the history of Dravidian and the Tamil languages, the comparative. Tamil Indo-European dictionary. Before getting into my talk, I want to put three things in perspective, because I have the rare honor of being with Dr. Arasendran. Number one, those of you who have read Caldwell, and particularly his introduction to 1856 and 1875, might recall one thing. Caldwell was least interested in the comparative grammar of Dravidian languages. If you read towards the close of the preface and also the close of the introduction, 1550s, it runs to about 80 pages. 1875, it runs to 130 pages. What it says is, ultimately, such comparative studies must lead to, nowhere is he talking about the monogenesis theory, but this is implied. It must ultimately lead to a stage where we are able to account for the proto-existence of a language. He never said it was Tamil or any language. And towards the middle of the preface and also the introduction, he cautions the Tamils. If you're a very serious reader of Caldwell, perhaps you will remember that it is a kind of an indictment on the Tamil community. The Tamil Pandits are really good at mugging things up and reproducing it verbatim. But never ever do they think. And Caldwell offers this as a remedy. If at all you want to know the greatness of your language, the only option opens to you at that time. He was writing in 1856, and then in 1875, 1991, Caldwell dies. Compare your language with other languages, not only just language. Compare your system of philosophy, your system of literary study, whatever the kind of thing that you know about your language, compare it with other systems, and then try to establish what exactly is your contribution. Again, two things. Never ever in the preface or in the introduction he denounces the Sanskrit language. Let me quote. If growth means change, and change means development, I'm quoting Caldwell verbatim. Sanskrit language for a long period of time in Indian history had never been a dead language, but a living language. And number two, while talking about the Shasa Jaha, Caldwell says, Tamil is destitute. He uses the very term destitute. And therefore, to understand Caldwell, we got to put him in the right perspective. Caldwell is such a great genius. A universal vision he had. A vision in which he was trying to see the whole humanity as one family. Like our Yadumure, Yavrunkelur, or Vasudeva Kudumbaha. So this was the objective and the perception of Caldwell, which very often we fail to understand. But then one thing in which Caldwell was interested. Caldwell wanted to have a comparative dictionary that he implies in the preface. And therefore, the first part of my essay or my presentation, I tried to show Caldwell as a proto-etymologist. If Caldwell were alive today and you would ask him, he would say, no, least of all, I'm only a comparative philologist. I never wanted to be an etymologist at all. And what Caldwell wanted to achieve, what Caldwell wanted to do today, I am really happy that this great project of the Tamil Nadu government with Arasendran has come to a fruition. Caldwell's vision has taken shape. That's number one. Number two, I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that this year we are celebrating the centenary of one of the greatest doyens of not just Tamil, not just Dravidian, but all languages of the world, who loved all languages of the world. When he was talking about mother tongue consciousness, he said, whatever I say about my mother tongue equally applies to all languages of the world, not necessarily my language. Can any of you tell me the name of the man? V.I. Subramoniam, the first ever Vice Chancellor of Tanjavur Tamil Palkalekazhagam, and he was invited by the governor and invited by the entire cabinet. I think perhaps the only instance in the whole of the Tamil Nadu history where a person was invited to chair a university was V.I. Subramoniam. And V.I. Subramoniam has an interesting paper on DED. Morning there was a reference made to that paper by Dr. Ilanguntan. One of the most objective, one of the most scholarly, one of the most caustic review of DED was by no other than Subramoniam himself. He calls it not an etymological dictionary. DED is not an etymological dictionary. This is only a comparative lexical dictionary of genetically related as of the genetically non-related, genetically related cognates as of genetically non-related cognates. And therefore, he very much wanted the dictionary to be revised along definite, well-established etymological principles. 1960, I think it's more than 60 years, 60 plus now. And one of the major projects that Professor V.I. Subramoniam wanted to do was, number one, Tamil word corpus, which I am really happy that my good friend Dr. Pongundan has done it. This is something that he wanted to do as long as he was a vice chancellor, even during the first half of the second term, when he had to leave because of his differences of opinion with the government, other ministers. And the second thing is an etymological dictionary. And today, as we celebrate the centenary of Professor V.I. Subramoniam, 1 year celebration, it started on the 18th. And Hindu Tamil Disai, Dinamalar, a lot of Tamil newspapers, including the New Indian Express, carried excellent articles on the contributions of VIS. And today, if VIS were alive, I'm sure that he would be the first one. I don't know what word I should use, because he doesn't believe in praising or complimenting. No, never at all. He's a man who meant business. Science is science. And Caldwell, in the introduction, also points to one important thing. That to me seems to be in the present political context. I'm not writing into the political scene at all. Right in front of me is Dr. Andhimazhai, who has written 2 excellent papers now. I don't know how many of you have read it. You should read it. One paper is on viewing Indian languages not from the Himalayas and the Indus, but from the south. This is published in the V.I. Subramoniam centenary volume that was just released a day ago. An excellent paper running to 27 pages. I appreciate the audacity and the daring spirit in Dr. Andhimazhai to defend the great tradition and legacy of one community that has contributed a lot for the growth and the development of the vast sea of humanity, Tamil language. And another, Pasha Parivar, Somasayar Sahib as a president, rewriting Indian history. India is a Punya Bhumi and Sanskrit is the Punyan language. A divine theory of language, a divine descent of language, which was outrightly rejected by Caldwell, and 3,000 ago even by Tolkappiyar. And Tolkappiyar, when he talks about in Cholladhiyaram, when he talks about Vadasor Kizhavi, obviously this is a theory that was poo-poohed by Tolkappiyar himself. And then Caldwell says, if at all your study has to be a study that becomes locally, nationally, internationally, globally acceptable, then these are the 3 factors that you ought to take into account. Number 1, it has to be scientific. All through the introduction, 10 places he repeatedly uses the term scientific, scientific, scientific. I have been attempting a scientific study of the Dravidian languages. And number 2, it's not enough that you make your study scientific, but the components of being made as scientific should also be visibly available in your study. Number 1, it should be data-driven, data-based, absolutely data-based. Not just data-based, verifiable the theory of verifiability and the theory of reliability, and finally the theory of truth value. These are the three things I'm trying to project in the introduction and the preface of the book. Only then will your research be a research that would get sustained for years together, ages together. That is why 1856 books even today remains unrivaled. Maybe that there are a lot of shortcomings. Some of the concepts of Caldwell are outdated, but still the vision that he has been able to project through the book. 1856, a comparative study of the Dravidian or the South Indian family of languages, even today continues to be the driving vision, not for Tamil, not for Sanskrit, but for all languages of the world. Remember 1856, a comparative grammar of Dravidian is released. 1875, he brings out the revised edition. 16 years after the publication of 1856 comparative grammar was released, Beams, a comparative grammar of the Indo-European family of languages. 16 years after, Beams and Caldwell had been good friends. And in the 1875 preface, Caldwell bemoans, really feels sorry that Beams had not been able to bring out the second volume of, only the first volume was released in 1862, 16 years after the publication of comparative grammar. He really feels sorry. This is a study that will contribute. Very often we totally misunderstand Caldwell as a person who denounced the Sanskrit language, disintegration of it. Not at all. If at all there is one person who should be hailed as the great integrator of India, of the whole world, I would say undoubtedly it was Caldwell. When His Excellency the Governor of Tamil Nadu, for no reason whatsoever, had heavily come upon Caldwell as a school dropout. The then Vice Chancellor of the Tamil University, Subramoniam, JNU and Warsaw University, Dr. Nachimuthu and I together brought out a book, and the book I made it very clear. If only His Excellency the Governor had read the preface, he would have said, he is the great champion and the defender of the Sanskrit language and not the Tamil language. But remember, his method was scientific. Verifiable data, theory of reliability, and finally, truth value. This is what every research should lead to us. And therefore, my compliments, my hats off to you. My paper is divided into 3 sections. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I wanted to just put things in the perspective. That's why the reference to V.I. Subramoniam and Caldwell. Number 1, as I told you right at the start, I'm trying to show in the first part of my paper, Caldwell as a proto-etymologist. A highly untenable theory, but still I do believe that if you carefully read between the lines of every word in the preface and the introduction, we would accept this postulate. And number 2, Skeat, in what way does it differ from Caldwell? Not only Skeat and Monia Williams, both. It's not just what way that they differ from Caldwell. What exactly is the contribution of W.W. Skeat, 1882, Caldwell, 1856? And what are the strengths and the limitations? And finally, I'm not just getting into the dictionary at all, but I'm quoting one Levitt, who is right in front of me alive. And here, although Father Hiras is there, I would have been happy had you had a portrait of Pavanar. What Pavanar and what Levitt said. Just 2 quotes which summarizes, epitomizes what this great linguistic adventure is about. And with that I stop. Okay. Number 1, Caldwell as a proto-etymologist. Robert Caldwell's Comparative Grammar of Dravidian or South Indian family languages, not an etymological dictionary. It may be very clear. And also readers, all of you know, there was only a comparative philologist. He was only a comparative historian and never an etymologist. And very interestingly, one thing that Caldwell does all through the book is never ever trying to go in for the root of a word or for the base of a word or to try to trace the etymology back to the Dravidian root. Never. And still more surprisingly, one thing that I have noted in Caldwell is Jacob Grimm Grammatic. That was published in the year 1822. For the first time, he postulates the theory of Grimm's law. The stops becoming the fricatives. Father, patre, pida. In English it becomes father. But Werner comes 50 years later, 1877 and 1887. Werner was the one who gives the final shape to the Grimm's law. But nowhere, right from page 1 to page 691, the 56th edition, or 700 and something, 75 edition, does he make a reference to Jacob Grimm? No reference. Caldwell was very serious to linguistics and language sciences in the University of Glasgow. Dr. James R Daniel, one of the brilliant Greek scholars and one of the best comparatives then available on the whole of the European continent, was his mentor, his teacher. Caldwell only 16 or 17 when he got into the university. He was selected as the new delegate for the course in the Oxford University, but then he was denied admission basically because Caldwell was born in Ireland, the place where the Protestant Catholic conflict was at its peak, and therefore mistaking Caldwell to be a terrorist or an extremist. He was denied admission. The man who stood first, the young boy who stood first with all great dreams of getting into the portals of Oxford and Cambridge, he was denied. And then he joins the London Missionary Society and he gets into Glasgow University, finishes a course, and he says in his autobiography, Reminiscences of Bishop Caldwell, that was edited by A.J. White, his first son-in-law, Eliza's husband. My only ambition then, as a young man, was to move over the whole world, at least in one place, to decipher a language that has not been deciphered, and to write a comparative grammar for it. So as a student, he must have been exposed to Grimm's Law. A Darsh Grammatic, the great grammar book written by Grimm. No reference, absolutely no reference. It still remains a mystery. I've been asking some of the best Dravidian scholars as to why. Maybe because he was least interested in finding the sound correspondences in tracing back to the root of a word. So that is why, right in the beginning, Robert Caldwell's comparative grammar is not an etymological dictionary by design, but it contains substantial proto-etymological material that anticipate a systematic etymology. But unfortunately, we have never had a good etymological dictionary in Tamil at all. Now, let me just give one or two differences between Caldwell and Skeat. The differences, mostly only differences. The primary aim of Caldwell was genetic and comparative grammar. The primary aim of Skeat's was to write the word history. In most of the places, Skeat evades. Wherever Keats has not been able to find the basic root or the base of the word, he says, let us leave it to the future research. The scope of the book, Dravidian plus Sanskrit in Caldwell, but English and Sanskrit in Skeat. At least there is one thing for which we must appreciate Skeat, basically because till then they believed, just as we believe, we were made to believe that Sanskrit was the root of all languages, mother of all languages in India. All Britishers, the Englishmen, were made to believe that Latin was the mother. And Skeat, for the first time, poo-pooed and blasted a theory. Latin was not. Moving from modern English to Middle English, from Middle English to Anglo-Saxon or Old English, from Old English to Norse, from Norse to High Germanic, to Old High Germanic, and then the proto-form. This is the way that he tries to derive words in his Keats dictionary. So that was more Sanskrit and English. Caldwell was Dravidian and Sanskrit. Caldwell's method was comparative philology, and Skeat's method was historical etymological. And sound laws, if at all we can defend Caldwell, we could possibly say that it is implicit, never ever formalized in Caldwell. But it is explicit and very beautifully formalized in Skeat. And finally, the etymological reasoning in Caldwell, very partial, very negligent. Perhaps he could even go to the extent of saying that it is absolutely nil. But in Skeat, it is all. Now, one word about Skeat, and with that I stop. Skeat's dictionary was published in the year 1882. 9 years' time, Caldwell is going to die. 1891, Caldwell dies. Again, there is no reference to Skeat. In Skeat also, there is no reference to Caldwell. But one very interesting thing about the European history, particularly the European theology, is that there was a very close, intimate relationship between Max Muller on the one hand and Caldwell on the other hand. At one stage, each diverging, each taking a stand of his own. And Caldwell fighting with Max Muller, and Max Muller fighting with Caldwell. But not to Skeat, not to Grimm, not to Werner. I think this is a serious point that language historians must take into account. Etymology before Skeat's time was largely speculative, guesswork. English words were often derived from Latin simply because Latin was regarded as the number one prestigious, number two divine, number two the lingua franca of Europe. Superficial resemblance frequently replaced historical proof. This is the stage in which Skeat comes into the picture. With the rise of the comparative philology in Germany, scholars began to demonstrate systematic relationship among Indo-European languages, and Skeat brought these continental methods into English scholarship and applied them very rigorously in the English vocabulary. Just as I was making a reference to Caldwell's scientific and verifiable data and theory of reliability, or to get at the truth value, and here is what Skeat was aiming at. A historical tracing of forms, number one. Regularity of sound change, number two, which Caldwell never did. Comparative linguistic evidence, Caldwell tried. But remember, Caldwell was writing at a time when Caldwell had no access to Tolkapian, no access to Sangam literature. V.I. Subramoniam in one place says in the translation of Tolkapiam into English by Gloria Sundaramadi and Indra Manuel, Tolkapiam and Sangam classics are the two eyes of the Tamils. But unfortunately, as Illa could have it, Caldwell never has had access to either Tolkapiam or Sangam literature. Had he had, his comparative grammar would have been different. Beautiful statement that is made by V.I. Subramoniam. All right. So documentary citation, tracing it back to the earliest citation possible, maybe to Chaucer, taking it back to Chaucer to Beowulf, bringing it back to the first ever attested record of Anglo-Saxon writing in English. And finally, logical, semantic development, which Caldwell never tried. A logical, semantic development so that you will be able to correlate one root with another root or one base with another base. And there are a lot many things I brought with me, a lot of words that Caldwell and Skeat have been able to derive based on the historical principle or the etymological principles. I leave it, and finally with this quote, just two quotes. That endorses, expresses a sort of a solidarity. If at all I may use the term, a spiritual solidarity, not just linguistic. Last two slides. Yes, just as when Sir William Jones turned to Persian and Sanskrit, he was able to see the connection between the different branches of Indo-European. So when we turn to Dravidian and Tamil in particular, with its classical literature dating back to the early centuries of BCE and its cultivated conservatism, we are able to see more clearly many features of Nostratic and other families and superfamilies of languages pointing to a monogenetic theory of language, which Caldwell never ever spoke about in his book. And finally, the last one, next page. This is a forerunner, and with that I stop. Since the ancient Tamils who migrated from, it's a very popular Kumari continental theory, Vadavengadam, Ten Kumari, right, Kumari continent, to the banks of the Ganges, metamorphosed first into Dravidians, and later into Aryans. After reaching Europe, since a group of those Aryans had arrived in India as forefathers of the Vedic Aryans, it is but natural that southern words as proto-forms are used in the Western Aryan languages and their later forms used in the Eastern Aryan, Vedic and Sanskrit languages. And today the great responsibility for us is to very scientifically, in the words of Caldwell, to establish that there is a possibility. We are making only a hypothetical statement, not a statement of always a fact and truth. Because in the world of research, anything can be questioned, anything can be challenged anytime. And as proponents of the theory, we must always be open to any criticism, any review that comes from any part of the world, and to try to trace the root back to some monogenetic form or a protogenetic form where maybe not out of love, but out of scientific reasoning we say that it could have been, not that it was, it could have been Tamil or it could have been Proto-Tamil. And that is the direction towards which your thesis is going, your 4 volumes that you have been able to bring out, a comparative dictionary of the Tamil, and very, very nice that you use the term Tamil instead of Dravidian, and the Indo-European languages. I have all my appreciation for Dr. the great institution. I'm sorry, that is a way that I should call himself an institution. And I think morning, a lot of people refer to him for his great accomplishment, and I want you to applaud. I think the applause was not to the expectation of, or the way that this gentleman deserves it. And therefore, before I conclude, may I request all of you to give a big round of applause to Dr. Aravindran for the extraordinary job that he has done. இருந்தமிழே உன்னால் இருந்தேன். அடுத்தது நீங்க முடிச்சுக்காங்க. இருந்தமிழே உன்னால் இருந்தேன். Congrats, all the best. Go ahead. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen.